Our featured guest tonight is here to chat about one of the Gulf Coast's most interesting moments over the past 40 years, and one that has left a permanent mark on so many in our viewing area. His documentary, Who Are You People?, playing off the famous line from the film, attempts to tell the story and all of its impacts from the point of view of the locals who experienced it. Here to chat about the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, please give a warm weekly show welcome to director of Who Are You People?, Jonathan Robinson. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, David, for having me. I appreciate it.
So before we start talking about this massive moment in our local cultural history, where did you grow up?
Mobile, Alabama, born and raised.
So you are from here?
Yes, sir.
That is awesome. So what first got you interested in the local stories around Close Encounters?
When I was obviously was not born in the time period of which I could have seen it in the theater, born in 76. So being able to watch it on ABC when they re-aired it in the 80s, my mother would sit there with me because she was an avid sci-fi fan, and she would kind of point out tips about certain scenes that were shot in West Mobile. Obviously, a good majority, 80% of the film was shot in Alabama and Baldwin County as well. And the point was like, well, where exactly? She could never specify, where those scenes were located. And besides, the hangar there at Berkeley Airfield, that was what everybody pretty much knew. But other than that, I wanted the finer details.
So when did you first start to hear stories or learn about the actual history beyond just the hangar?
Well, obviously with the advent of the internet, there's a lot of information that will start to trickle through in regards to certain areas that, especially the neighborhood where the Nearys, that Roy and Ronnie, the neighborhood they lived in, the house they lived in, was located in the Overlook subdivision behind USA. And that was one of those first little chunky tidbits that kind of came out through searching on the internet. But I wanted to know more, especially with a lot of the deleted scenes that we would not see in the theatrical release.
So did you have any movies that you saw growing up besides this one that made you stop and go, I want to do whatever that is?
Yes, sir. I think like a lot of us of my age group and a little bit older, we were enamored with what Spielberg was producing, especially what George was producing, George Lucas. But then you get into the finer artistic realm of individuals like John Milius or individuals that go back into the foreign film aspect. But I think from a pop culture standpoint, it's always going to be Spielberg that stands out foremost in our minds from the age bracket that I'm considered part of.
When you guys were making the documentary, you were pretty far removed in time from the events themselves. So what were the logistical challenges of getting a documentary like this made so far off?
It was literally starting with the bare bones of information and letting it kind of snowball into more and more information.
How does a movie like Close Encounters ever find its way to Mobile, Alabama, of all places?
Because we had exactly what the producers were looking for. And the catalyst was those hangars. They sent scouts out there. They looked at it, gave it the green light, and that's how Mobile, Alabama has become synonymous with Close Encounters.
Did Mobile even have a film office at the time? I mean, how did they logistically manage to make this film?
Not technically Mobile. Up in Montgomery, there was a semblance of one in the sense of individuals who were in control of the interior of the state as well. They served the interests of the interior.
Now, what are some of the other iconic locations and scenes that were shot here? I mean, maybe we can go through a little bit of each and the story behind them. The first one I was made aware of was the house in Carlisle off Overlook Drive in Mobile. What did you learn about that location?
Well, it's one of those situations where they were obviously looking for that house, and they were looking for a house that for rent that they could get up in there and do whatever they wanted. And it was one of the individuals out of Montgomery, one of the Alabama representatives there, that basically said, what you might want to do is flat out buy the house, brand new, do whatever the heck you want to do with it. And then you can just put it back together because you have a construction crew that's always on standby. And then you put it back on the market. And that's exactly what they did.
So do you know the story of how they found the country house in Baldwin County? I mean, what's the story there? I mean, I think the house is still there, pretty much the same as it was in the film, no?
It is, absolutely. And that owner, it stayed within that particular family for a long time, I believe, through the 80s and 90s up into this century as well. Joe Alves, I know, had gotten some sort of lead on it's supposed to be a country house that looks like Muncie, Indiana.
So one that I didn't know that was shot here was a railroad scene. It was shot in Bay Minette. Can you tell us what you learned about that?
So the railroad crossing sequence. I'm sorry, you're talking. Sorry, excuse me. The evacuation sequence is what you're referring to.
Yeah, in Bay Minette.
So yes, sir. That aspect is supposed to stand in for Gillette, Wyoming, and so there's even signs on the depot. And the depot, obviously, I think, as you know, has been moved from its original location and turned into the JC, not JC, but it's like the city hall, I guess, of the area. They actually, put it on a truck and moved the entire building itself from the L&N railroad line that used to actually have control of that line. I think it's CSX now that owns it, but L&N was the name of that railroad. As it stood in for Gillette, Wyoming in the story, all the townspeople are evacuating, and so they needed tons of mobilians to stand in as farm hands and just families that literally were trying to evacuate because of this threat of gas and anthrax, I meant to say.
Yeah.
So with that being said, it was a hot, really nasty weekend. They did it in June of 1976, and that particular summer was gruesome. It was just a brutal summer that a lot of people recollect. And again, it was a chance for family members to kind of be with each other and make a little bit of money, because you're only making $2.30 an hour at that time as an extra. And they seem to have all had a great time doing it. But again, you kind of feel like, cattle.
So, Jonathan, we've got to go to a quick commercial break, pay the bills. Can you stick around till after the break?
Yes, sir.